I could easily talk to most guests on the podcast for far longer than these episodes allow, and no one sits in that category more than Adrian Barker, and that's exactly why he's the first guest to be on the show for a second time. The first part of this episode was truly just us catching up, and I wasn't going to leave it in, but when editing our conversation, I felt there was a very honest sense of vulnerability that inspired me to include it in the post. Given the fact neither of us are natural self-promoters in this age of look at me, I wanted to share it as I hope it'll help others know that they're not alone in their hesitations. We have an incredible amount of overlap when it comes to the ways we view the world of business, and as you'll find in this episode, the ways we view the world on a personal level as well. Happiness is something we all strive for, and Adrian and I discuss the process of finding it. We take it a step further by identifying how happiness relates to luxury watches and things that are otherwise characterized as materialistic. I thoroughly enjoy getting to know Adrian more and more, and it's fairly obvious given the amount of laughter in this episode. And it was really great to swap stories and experiences as we dive deeper into his e-commerce business and his overall growth as a content creator. If you missed our first conversation, I do encourage you to go back and listen to it. Adrian's just as real as it gets, and this is exactly why I know we could have easily made this episode 3 hours. But a condensed round 2 will have to do for now, so why not get into it? I'm your host, Wesley Smith, and you're listening to the Standard Age Podcast. By the way, thanks for doing this again.
Hey, no worries. No, it's an absolute pleasure. I love what you're doing. Not just your podcast, but your products are seriously kick ass. I'm wearing your products constantly. Well, I had your shorts on yesterday. I love that t-shirt. That tee is, and I'm not just saying this because I'm talking to you. Like seriously, that t-shirt is killer. It's like it's got stuff in it that makes me sit up straight. It's like it's not tailored because you don't know my fit, but it's as if, you know, when you put on a suit jacket and it kind of, it makes you think, oh yeah, I'm going to hold myself correctly. That's exactly what the t-shirt does.
Yeah.
That's great. And the hat as well. I love my hat. It's the only baseball hat that actually
fits,
like suits me and fits. Yeah. I love baseball caps, but this is the last one I bought. I love the look of it, but it looks stupid.
Well, it's super casual too. Yeah. I mean, it's a different look, but it's, you know, I really appreciate you saying that. And quite frankly, I work very hard on the stuff that I want to produce, and I know that it's good shit. Like I know it's good because I've worked in this industry for 25 years and I really don't want to put out crap. Like this thing, everybody's telling me, like, if you actually like this like desk ornament, it's actually a functional shift knob.
No way.
Like this thing, like, yeah, it's basically a paperweight. It's like a solid block of aluminum, and it's the same aluminum that Audi uses in their A8 and aircraft aluminum. Like a lot of it's 6061 aluminum.
Right.
And like all these things, like this took me over 6 months to actually prototype, let alone make. And it's good. Like I know this stuff's good, but it's like I can't be the one to be like, you should buy this because it's good. Because they're going to be like, well, of course you're going to say that because you made it.
Yeah. And I'm exactly the same. I had an email from a customer the other day saying, hey, why don't you do a video talking about how you pair your straps with your watches or your outfit? It's like, yeah, shit, that's, of course. But it just feels weird, me talking about it. Because of course I think the straps are great. And of course I'm going to say, this strap goes with this outfit, and I completely understand what you mean by, I don't know, selling your own products, because of course you think it's great. But on the other side of it, we've just got to do it, because exactly like you say, I know my straps are great, and I just like you, I've worked hard to get these products to where they are. Some of the products that I have, I've sourced from people who I know do great products. But my native straps, for example, they are my strap. I've specified, I've sourced all the little elements that have gone into it, and that is the Bark and Jack product. And so I completely understand the idea of course I'm going to say it's great, and it's also tricky for me because I want to shout about your stuff, and I've got mates who are doing cool things that I want to shout about, but it's hard to like kind of say, because I do get paid by some people. I have sponsors of my content, and of course I'm going to say that's great stuff. Only work with people who I want to work with.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's quite obvious when I'm doing a video that's paid for by a website.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to kind of say, guys, I know I said that stuff's great, and I do think it's great, but I'm also paid to say that's great. But also this shit over here, like Wesley's just doing some kick-ass stuff. But it's hard to say that without someone thinking, oh yeah, Adrian's just being paid to say that.
Yeah, I mean, other than just saying that you're not, like, like.
yeah, exactly.
And it's tricky for you too to talk about like how you pair your straps with, your outfits and stuff, because you're very similar to me, where like you don't really want to be the face of your brand. You just want to make cool stuff and like talk about cool stuff. That's why you're talking about watches and you're not talking about your wife and kids, right?
Yeah.
Like, I know exactly where you're coming from. And the second you start to talk about yourself, it starts to enter like vlog territory as opposed to like third person content, if you will.
Yeah.
But I agree. I think if somebody requests that of you, I don't think you should do it just because the request was there, but I do think it makes sense for your brand, right? Because you do have taste and you do have style, and I think you would no, but you wouldn't pair anything that looks like shit. You know what I mean? Like you're not gonna,
exactly, yeah.
Just to sell it, like, oh, I always wear this khaki strap with this navy blazer, and you're like, would you? Like, So I think because you have the honesty and, more importantly, the integrity behind your product and your branding and your brand, and you personally, I think you wouldn't do it in a sleazy way, right? So
yeah. And it's sometimes hard to get to a point where the guys over at the Grey NATO have they seem to just slip it in, because I think they can just slip in. They mentioned you on.
I was blown away by that. They didn't tell me they were going to do it.
It's so cool and casual because there's two of them and they can have a two-way. It's kind of that they always have this bit at the start where they're like, oh, what have you been up to? I've been up to this and that. Oh, by the way, we've got this through. And it's just conversational, where it's hard for me to naturally say, oh, by the way, this has happened, without it sounding like I'm being paid to say this, because it's so tricky to do that.
Well, I know you're sort of on a time crunch, so we can delve into some stuff. But I actually wanted to kind of start off talking about some watches, and your recent post about the Breitling Premier B09. I think I watched it either yesterday or the day before. I really enjoyed the explanation of the differences in column wheels and the types of chronographs. I think not too many people talk about those types of things. They just say, oh, it's a vertical clutch, or like it's a column wheel. You know what I mean? Like, I think you did a really nice job explaining it.
Thanks very much. And it's tricky to know. I actually messed that part up. I've removed a section because I completely messed up one of the explanations between the column wheel and the vertical clutch and the cam actuated. But it's hard to know how deep to go into a certain thing. Mm-hmm. And this is this constant balance of how deep do I go? How much time do I spend on this item when I'm not being paid, and I want to really be clear that I'm not being paid? Mm-hmm. And it's a real tricky thing. So yeah, it's hard to know how much do I share about this product. At the same time, I want to be educational. I want to share a little bit. I'm not an expert, but I can research and I can share information. So I feel like I should share a bit more than what most people are doing. And also, I don't want to just say something looks cool and this is good. You should believe me because I say it's good. I say it's good because of X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
But it's also challenging to kind of say, I don't know. That video was tricky because I really like that watch, and it wasn't an advert, but I could see how people might see, oh, why does he like that watch so much? Despite the fact I mentioned that this isn't my kind of watch. Yeah, I love it. Oh, it's such a hard balance, Wesley. It really is hard to kind of figure out, where do I push this product because I think it's great, but at the same time, um, not being sponsored by them.
Well, see, yeah, no, exactly. And I just think that like you do such a nice job of that because you're going into an explanation in the way that, hey, if you don't already own a chronograph, like you even went into like the tactile feedback of
Yeah,
a column wheel, right? So you kind of gave me a visual and almost like physical representation of this piece without me having touched it. And so whether you messed something up or not, I just thought it was great because as an owner of several chronographs, I was like, you know what? He's exactly right. And because I've never had to explain this to somebody, right? Like
yeah.
nobody's ever asked me for mechanical movement advice, you know, but, and it's funny. I'm wearing the Tudor chrono
Oh,
today
cool.
as as kind of an homage to that video because obviously Breitling and the Tudors share a little bit of tech here.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
But what's your favorite modern chronograph?
Oh, wow. Um,
And you don't have to pick one.
I don't know the exact name,
Okay.
but there is a fairly expensive monopusher chronograph by Montblanc. It's using their Minerva caliber inside. It's around 30 grand, and it
Mm-hmm.
has a salmon dial, and it's a monopusher, and it looks like it could easily have Patek on the dial.
I know the exact watch you're talking about.
I can't remember the name, but it is a gorgeous looking thing. And it's funny when I think about Mont Blanc, you always think about, well, I always think about pens and not necessarily the watches. But I remember getting hold of this piece, having held many of their kind of ETA powered, Sleater powered movement watches, and thinking, this is different. This is a different sort of Mont Blanc. This is a proper watch
Right.
as so far as like this has real stuff going on inside. This isn't just off the shelf movements. This isn't just someone having a business idea. This is like someone's really sat down and thought about this, and
Mm-hmm.
they've killed it. This is
Yeah.
awesome watch, but pricey. It's well over 20 grand. I think it's around 30 grand or something.
Right. Right.
Stunning thing. I'd love it.
Yeah. I know that when you were working at Apple, you sold your stock and bought an Explorer 2. How did you land on that watch?
Oh man,
I love
I
that
sold
story, by the
everything.
way.
But yeah, it was a bit of a. I sold loads of things. I sold cameras. I had about 9 guitars at one point, and that was the final push. Was selling my last guitar, um, and Apple stocks had been going crazy. I bought in at about something like $12, and I sold at around $120.
Oh my God.
$170, something like that, something crazy. And all the time I thought, there's no way these stocks could keep going up. So let's get out. They kept on going up. But yeah, I kept not wanting to get a Rolex. I kept wanting to look at. I was looking at Omega Speedmasters. In particular, there was a broad arrow which had a gold bezel, a white gold bezel, which was pretty cool. But there's just something about Rolex that I didn't want Rolex because everyone had Rolex and everyone was talking about Rolex, and it kind of seemed like the obvious choice, kind of like getting a 911 or or just getting a Lamborghini. It's kind of like that's just obvious. Go off and get a
Right.
McLaren, or go off and get a TVR or something a bit different. And so I kept kind of wanting to get off course and look at stuff that was around, the smaller things. But every time I was searching, the logic just kept drawing me to this Explorer 2. So I just pulled the trigger, and it was back in the time when this watch was listed for about 3,200, something like that. Yeah, it was 3,200. I emailed the guys, the dealers in London. I was like, look, I'll pick it up today, and give you 2,600 for it, just as a complete lowball offer.
Yeah.
2,400, no, 2,600, and they emailed back straight away saying, yeah, sure, come get it. Like, what? That was a proper lowball offer. But yeah, that was back when these things just didn't really sell. So yeah, that was my first proper
Right.
watch.
Right. 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 What? So I'm curious. Why the 36 millimeter Explorer as opposed to an OP no date?
Hmm. I think probably that is purely down to branding and image. because the Explorer is the sports watch.
Ah,
And the OP isn't a sports watch. The OP, I love the OP range. I think it's an awesome range.
sure.
But technically, the Explorer is part of the sports family, part of the professional family, whereas the OP isn't. So yeah, I think I don't know. And the problem is for me, I have just fallen in love. I don't know where it is right now. I've fallen in love with my Explorer, and so I can't see beyond that. I can't imagine anything different. I've got my name down for the new Explorer 36mm, and I will probably get it. But I hate the idea that I might at some point sell my current 36mm Explorer. There's no logical sense to say keep that watch beyond the emotion that I've connected with that watch. There's no logic to say you need it. It's got an old, outdated movement. It's got a terrible bracelet.
I was gonna say can you tell the weight difference in person?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
You must, right? Yeah, because I held an older one yesterday. Actually, I met a guy for a beer, and he had an older model. I think it was like a late '90s, like 1999 model, and yeah, you could definitely tell the bracelet's light for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels cheap. It doesn't feel like what you'd imagine a Rolex to feel like.
But God,
So
it
the new
looks
one
good.
feels great. Oh yeah, it's just cool. I love it. I don't know what mine is.
Am I the only one that hates the color of Super Luminova when illuminated? You know that blue, like that kind of new blue color, as opposed to like that kind of greenish.
I think Loom as a whole is overrated. I think it's. Um,
I hate Super Luminova, man.
I never see them. I guess my main watch is my Explorer, and so the Loom just doesn't work, so I don't get any of that.
Right.
But if you wake up in the middle of the night, or if you need Loom, it only ever really works if you go from a bright place into a dark place. If I go into my garage, right, straight away I can see it. I think, oh shit, that looks cool. But if I'm waiting until, I don't know, if I go out camping, the watch is pretty much dead by the time it comes to midnight. So I think Loom it's a fun thing to talk about, and if you've got a UV light, you can power it up straight away. But apart from that, I never get to see it.
I totally agree with you. I think about that. Not often, but when I do see the Loom, bright, it is cool. But I'm like, yeah, it kind of doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. I'd much prefer to have like a little crown that you can just press in, and it will just do a little backlight or something like those old Timex Ironman, I think they had.
Yeah, 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 yeah. All right, so let's talk about your YouTube channel. It's obviously you've been on before, and again, thank you so much for doing this one more time.
Thanks for having me.
Your channel is talking watches and drinking coffee. It seems coffee was inevitable, right? I think it's a perfect match as far as an e-commerce product.
Yeah, it just felt like a fun thing to do, and I've probably had more coffee companies approach me than watch companies.
That's hilarious.
And it is fun. I have sacks and sacks of coffee from just random people, and so yeah, it was inevitable. The challenge is that coffee is such a personal thing. And just like watches, there are so many different ways of getting coffee. There's so many ways of making coffee. There's so many different tastes, and so I think as a business, it's a really tricky thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
You need to have lots of, not lots of varieties, but a good size of variety to cater for different tastes ranges.
Sure.
But also, it's one of those things where you start to create a relationship with your local roaster. Whereas I'm based in Scotland, having coffee roasted in California and sent around the world. So there is a mismatch there, but it is fun, and this stuff is kick-ass coffee. And I can say that because these guys are doing all the hard work. I just get to do the fun stuff where I taste it and say, yeah, that's great. No, that's crap. Let's change this. Let's make this darker.
Yeah, I face a similar situation / conversation with all the products that I make because I'm not knitting my fabric, so it's kind of like, thank you for producing my product so well.
yeah, exactly. But I think it's one of those things where once you've created a name for yourself, you and also you have an eye for detail or a vision, you don't need to be the executor. You don't need to be the one doing the craft. It's about finding those who are great at doing the craft. I can't make a leather strap. I know the process. I could talk someone who's good with their hands and good with tools through the process,
Sure.
but I'm not the guy doing it. But I know what I want. I know what I want it to look like, and I think that isn't necessarily what a lot of the craft people know what to do. And so I think it's a good relationship. I think it's how stuff should be.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Um, Regarding your channel, you recently said your face being in the thumbnail is an algorithmic decision. Where do
Yeah,
where do you find that kind of information to make that kind of informed decision?
there's I don't know where I found that actual bit of information, but I have a newsletter that comes around from various companies. There's a huge community around trying to understand the YouTube algorithm. There are YouTube channels based on understanding YouTube itself, but then at the same time, you can be assigned. I've just been assigned a new YouTube strategic manager, and so they kind of look at your content, look at the technical side of the content and advise on how to make it better. And it just so happens that people go onto YouTube for visual entertainment, and they can see a picture of a nice car or a nice watch or a nice mountain, but that nice watch or mountain or car doesn't really have any emotional connection to it. And so by adding your face, you can add intrigue, you can add anger, you can add excitement just by showing your face. The
Right.
problem is that my content was never supposed to be about me. It was always just like what you mentioned earlier, being the third person. It was always, I'm just the deliverer of whatever is going on. It's about
Yeah.
you and the product as opposed to me being part of this relationship. So I do find it really awkward having my face as part of the thumbnail. I can often spend as long taking the thumbnail photograph as I do to actually record the bloody video, because it's just weird. I'm not a photogenic person, and I don't need my face to be out there. But that's just how it is. And it's, if you want to be big on YouTube, then you have to play by the game. There's a lot of people who complain about, oh, no one's watching my videos, or I don't get as many views as so and so. But you're not doing the game like so and so. That they are, they're playing along with what's required, and that's just what you have to do.
Yeah, it's funny. It's almost like climbing the corporate ladder. There's a game there.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah,
Which
don't
is
complain
so
about
funny.
your boss getting the job or whatever if you haven't been doing the arse licking and all the showing off of what your work is. I was rubbish at all that stuff.
Yeah, I was awful at it. I'm terrible at it. My best friend was in town over the weekend, and he was basically like, "Yeah, I think part of your problem was you."
I was just like, gee, thanks. And you are not wrong.
But that's why we're doing what we're doing.
Right. Which is so ironic because now you've got a different ladder to climb and a different game to
Yeah,
play, I
exactly.
guess. So with that advisor, like how did you get assigned to that person? Did you seek them out, or does YouTube assign you an advisor because of your subscriber count?
Yeah, I got my first strategic manager when I hit around 60,000. And I think the algorithm just highlights certain people who are getting traction,
Right.
just to kind of coach them into the right space. For YouTube, it's all about numbers. It's all a numbers game. So if you're doing the right numbers, they're going to help you out. If you're not, then they're not going to help you out.
That's incredible.
I don't know what the trigger was this time. The channel's not particularly growing massively quickly, and I'm getting decent amount of, I'm getting 1 million views a month. But that's not, like, within the YouTube world, that's not massive. That's kind of just normal, I'd guess. But I don't know. It's a new person, so I'll see what they're up to. Hopefully
Well,
that'll help.
Well, I wanted to congratulate you because since we last spoke, you hit 100,000. But as of I think yesterday, you were at 146,000, which
Yeah.
I don't know. Is it me, or do milestones always seem to be a steam engine? Like I feel like you got to almost 50% growth in such a short amount of time.
It's nice that you say that. I don't think it's been a short. I think it's slow, but that's not necessarily me saying, "Oh, I wish it was quicker."
Right.
I wouldn't be upset if there was quicker growth, but at the same time, I'm very happy with what's going on. I'm having fun, and I always remind myself that's the focus, is to have fun. I could be making more money, I could be making more content, and I could be growing quicker if I did different things. But there has to be a balance of how much do I play the game and how much do I just have fun.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm making the content that I want to make. I'm doing the things that I want to do. If what I do stumps the growth, for example, I've got a couple of Oris watches in at the moment. That video isn't going to get high views. So that video won't get above 100,000 views. I could go down to learn. I was invited to the launch of the new Tudor that came out today. I could have gone down to that meeting, made a video on that. That would have got 100,000 views. That just didn't fit within my family schedule. And so it's just one of those things. So there are things that I could do that would speed up the growth, increase the growth. But my focus is, don't make this a job. Make this a hobby. And if people come along for the ride, then awesome. If they don't, then that doesn't matter. It's about, I didn't enjoy my last job. And so I'm keen to make this not be a job.
Absolutely. I feel that's exactly my approach to Standard H, honestly. Like, the day it becomes work is the day I don't want to do it anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How much time?
That's my concern about the next step. I kind of feel like the next step is inevitably going to be selling watches in some capacity, but at what level, how I go about it, I don't know. How I execute it, I don't know, because there is danger that I could take investment. I've got a couple of people interested in investing, and I could take investment, open up an office, hire a team, and have that team run the day-to-day of various bits and pieces. Is that the route that I want to go? Do I want to be the manager of a team of people?
Right.
I think I'd actually prefer to be in the mountains making a video about a random watch being launched. But I'm really at a crossroads of what is the next step and what is that actually going to be like. Do I just carry on the journey that I'm doing, which future-wise, do I want to be doing this when I'm 50? I'm probably not going to be TV like energy for when I'm 50, right? So I don't know what that looks like. I do like the idea of having a business that isn't reliant on me being on screen.
Yeah.
Because there has to be some element of what is that exit, just in case this thing doesn't work out. I also like the idea of just being the movie maker. My passion is making videos.
Right.
I don't have to be in front of the camera. It can be someone else in front of the camera.
Yeah, which kind of maybe lends itself to you maybe producing videos for larger brands, and you become more of a marketing agency.
And that is, yeah. And it would destroy I've thought about that, and there's been quite a few conversations with different companies around that idea. My big challenge, or my big kind of motivation around Bark and Jack, was to be completely independent from brands.
Right.
I'm learning that it's hard to be truly independent. And also, if I were to sell watches from Oris or Tudor, then I would no longer be independent. If I were to do a collaboration with them, I wouldn't be independent. If I went off and made content for them, I wouldn't be independent. At some point, that's just going to have to end, because there's a growth and there's a journey, and if I just want to make better and better content, then I guess I'll just have to stop being independent at some point.
But you're independent by way of maybe having the autonomy to choose which brands you work with.
That's exactly it. And this is a challenge that Hodinkee. I always say Hodinkee wrong. How do you say it?
It's funny you say it, because I remember you saying this on your video. It was so funny when you started saying it, because like I noticed, but I didn't care. But
now when you say it, it's hilarious because you're so aware of it.
I say
Hodinkee.
Yeah, it is. I say Hodinkee. Yeah.
Hodinkee.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but the challenge that they have is everyone says, "Oh, they're no longer independent." They're saying this is a good watch because they sell it. But why is it the narrative they sell it because they think it's a good watch? And so it's such a challenge that we're in. They
Well,
don't sell every watch. They
sh-
don't sell all Tudors. They handpick which ones they do, and it's
Yeah, the assortment just keeps growing actually with Glasuta and all these other brands they now sell. But like what I was saying is like if you're just making videos for other brands, meaning you're behind the camera, not in front of the camera, that in lies your autonomy and that is your independence because you're choosing to work with that brand, right?
yes.
So that was kind of what I was alluding to. But how much time, if any, do you spend looking back at what you've done and accomplished, or are you always looking forward?
But my character is to always look forward and never be content. My character is it's never good enough. And I think that's deeply ingrained from my dyslexia at school that it was genuinely never good enough. And so I have this kind of ongoing narrative that what I've just done is bad. It's never good. There might be elements that I like of something, but the overall package isn't good. So it's always about moving on. When I was a kid, that was a very, very toxic mindset to have. Now I thrive in that mindset of let's never sit still. Let's always push forward. I've started listening to a podcast that's exploring Buddhism, and I love the mindset of I don't know much about Buddhism, but what I've gathered from this podcast is that it's living in the moment that you have right now, and it's appreciating what you have around you, which if I break that down, I should be very happy. Right now I'm in my own little studio with more cameras than I could ever imagine. My kids are about to come home from school, which I apologize if they make a noise, but I'm in a house that I like, I have a car that I like, I have a wife that I usually like, and I have two kids that I love. So it's this right now is happiness, right? But then I often default back to my inside my head, and that is, but what are we doing tomorrow? How are we going to make tomorrow bigger than today? And it's a tricky balance of driving forward and making something bigger and better, but also appreciating what you have accomplished and what you have right now.
Yeah, I mean that's, in those sort of existential questions that you're referring to, they only get more profound as you get older. And I know I'm not much older than you are, but like again, my best friend was in town this last weekend, and like I'm willing to bet 30 or 40% of our weekend was spent talking about these types of subjects. Because, and I think it's also why you see like older people get more religious as they get older, because they're just kind of like, what am I doing here? A, B, like what's going to happen to me next,
Yeah.
And not that this needs to take a turn to a dark place, but it's just one of those things where it's like, I 100% understand what you're saying, because I think you and I both live a pretty good life, and we talk about the subjects that are, these are luxury products for the most part, which I was going to ask you later, but I could ask you now, like, how do you define luxury?
I think luxury is simply something that you don't need, but you want. And that can be anything. Like me grabbing a coffee in town, that was what, £2.80. I could have just waited 15 minutes and got home and had a coffee there, but there's a luxury of paying someone else to do that. It would have cost me pretty much nothing to make a coffee at home, but I got someone else to do it. It wasn't actually great, but the process of having them do it and me walking around with coffee, I liked that journey. So I think that's luxury.
Well, it also tastes different. Like, what your coffee at home tastes like. So there's like an adventurous aspect to that purchase. And that's what I like about getting coffee at different places.
That's really interesting. Yeah, that's interesting you say that, because it is. I always have this thought of, is this going to be a good one? Because it's never the same. At home, you kind of master your process, and it might change slightly, but you kind of know you're going to get a good coffee. But when you go out, there is kind of like a scratch card element of it is a gamble. Yeah. Yesterday, the coffee that I got from exactly the same person from exactly the same coffee shop was horrible. 2 sips and that was in a bin. I couldn't do it. Whereas the one today was decent.
Well, it's funny because like when I go on vacation, I never get coffee in the same place twice
Right.
because I want to find the best one. And then that way, I guess I shouldn't say I never get it twice because if I ever go back to visit that place, I now have found the best one. So then I know where to go next time.
Yeah. Yeah. But I do think luxury is basically anything that you have or can have that you just don't need. It's a luxury having 9 cameras. It's a luxury having more than one watch. It's a luxury being able to spend maybe anything more than 50 quid, 100 quid on a watch. And it's all relative to so many situations. And I don't think it necessarily comes down to money. It kind of comes down to, like, we've got a house. Technically, I could buy pretty much any watch, like financially, because I have a house. I don't have to have. I could have a flat. We could all live in a 1-bed flat, and I could have any watch that I want. So it is all relative into so many situations. My camera collection costs more than my watch collection, so it's a weird thing. I don't know how to answer that question. I think it is literally something that you don't need, but you have or can have.
Yeah, I tend to agree, but it's funny too, based on what you said before about and how it reverts back to that, where you're like, I should be happy, but I wake up each day wanting to be better, or like, how can I make it better? Like that alone is a luxury, right? Like you get to kind of choose how to make your day better, which is great because you're not just satisfied. Like I always try, I sort of live my life by a couple different things. One is tough but fair. And the other one is always be happy but never be satisfied.
Yeah, I like that.
And I really try my hardest to be that way, because then I'm also tough on myself, but I'm being fair. And that's also towards my wife as well. Like I'm very hard on her just as she's extremely hard on me. But at the end of the day, I try to be fair about everything, right? And oftentimes I find that I'm being very unfair to myself, which, we're all our own worst critics, but I'm just very hard on myself, and I wasn't dyslexic, right? Like, so I don't even have that element that I'm beating myself up over, where you're not necessarily beating yourself up over it, but there's got to be like a subconscious thing going on, it seems. Yeah.
For me, there definitely is an element of lacking in confidence is always tied in with dyslexia, and it's often the lack of confidence is more of a hindrance than the actual dyslexia itself, because it's always there, whereas dyslexia only affects certain areas of the brain.
Sure.
But the idea of never being happy, but never being content, so you're always striving forward. I think that's my state of mind. When I think of life, I can't help but just smile and be happy of how things are. And how things have kind of ended up. There's always going to be a bigger house. There's always going to be a nicer car, the newer car. And that's kind of just part of the fun. But I think ultimately it's around finding happiness. And it's such a hard thing to realize that is more important in life than the actual paycheck, because we are conditioned. I was talking to my son this morning about, I can't remember how we got into the topic of university. He's only 6, so that's a long way off. But he was like, do you have to go to university? Do you have to go to college and study for 3 years? What do you mean it costs £9,000? That's a huge amount of money. And do you have to do that to get a good job? I guess you have to do all this stuff to get a good job. But no, you don't. My cousin didn't go to university. She didn't even finish what we call sixth form. I don't know what the equivalent is, but she's earning more than all of her friends. It's not about your education. It's about your brain. It's about finding something that you want to do, as opposed to any certificate that you have. And ultimately, it's about finding something that you enjoy doing, because you will burn out. The amount of people that I know who work in the financial sector who hate their job. They earn horrible amounts of money and they're not happy. So what's the point? It's about finding happiness, and that's what I love about what I do.
It's funny. I think a lot of people maintain their status within those types of jobs because they feel that's what they deserve. Because otherwise, if you feel like you deserve more, no, I mean, that's maybe a sweeping statement. Maybe I shouldn't say that. But I think a lot of people do that, right? Like, this is what I deserve. Which is unfortunate because that means they don't always have the same support system that says, well, yeah, you should go after that. Or I do believe in you. Or they're just like, oh my God, I can't rock this boat because I've got 4 kids and this is stable and I need to provide for my family. I mean, like, there's a multitude of ways to look at it, obviously, and it's kind of crazy. How have you changed since you became a father?
Oh man, that was the best thing that could have happened to me becoming. I was going to say becoming a man, but I think that's
Just more
becoming an
mature.
adult.
Yeah.
Just mature.
Yeah.
I was what, I think I was 28 when I had my first kid, and up until then, I'd just been enjoying life. I was working in Apple retail. I was living in a house with 3 other mates. We were having barbecues on the balcony and getting stoned every night. And I was still living the whole college university lifestyle, loving life. It was awesome fun. But then the moment I realized I was having a kid, which was planned, it was all planned, but there's a difference between saying, let's do this, to actually happening. And then you have the kid in your arms. You think, this is my responsibility now. I need this thing to live. I want this thing to live.
Right.
Suddenly the whole responsibility of having someone else to look after was scary as hell, but also amazing because it really pushed me. It catapulted me into the requirement to do something good in my life. Suddenly my life had a purpose, which sounds sad, but in my head, that is exactly what happened. I now have a reason to work hard. I now have a reason to go out and get a better job, whatever that may be. I now have a reason to survive, not get into fights. Always make sure I look both ways when crossing the street. There's stupid little things like when I go snowboarding now, it's kind of not a matter of let's go off piste and piss about. It's kind of let's just make sure I get down the slope healthy and I'm still alive and I don't break my neck or something. So it's it was crazy. Have you got kids?
No, we don't have any yet. But it's funny. A lot of people say that actually, that it gives their life purpose. And like, it's funny just, as car lovers, right? Like a lot of my friends found themselves driving a lot slower, like even if nobody else is in the car, and clearly slower if the kids are in the back.
So
Yeah, I get like insanely angry if I see not just bad drivers, but aggressive drivers or people taking risks. Like you can kill a family, or you
yeah.
can kill 3 people in that family and leave 2 people and destroy their lives just by you being a prick and taking unnecessary risks. So yeah, I get crazy angry at people like that.
Yeah.
But I get frustrated at myself as well because I've one of my best mates. He doesn't have kids. He's worked his way up the corporate ladder. He's now a big director of a large tech company. And I just think, why didn't I have that switch in my head? Why couldn't I take life seriously? It took for me to create a life, for me to actually take life seriously and kind of get switched on and I don't know, get hungry to make something proper. Whereas he's had it from day one. He's I think he's about 6 years younger than me. He's earning crazy amounts of money. He's massive within this company. And it's like, wow. I was rubbish at that whole corporate.
Well, it's the system.
It is a system, but he's great at it, and he takes life not necessarily seriously, but he appreciates that he has to grasp opportunity and make opportunity and do something. Whereas I was rubbish at that. I now I do it.
Yeah.
I guess maybe I'm just switched on and engaged with what I'm doing, and previously I perhaps wasn't all that engaged in what I was doing.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess not that you asked for an answer to that question, but I think it's kind of one of those things where, like, let's say you're a professional dart player, right? And you're the best in the world. But then you could also be like, but why wasn't I a basketball player? I could have made millions. You know what I mean? Like, you're the number one thing in the world, but yet you could have done something different to make more money. But I don't know. Yeah, I mean, but that, what is it? Comparison is the thief of joy.
Isn't that the
Sure.
expression?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because I used to look I still look up to him, but I look up to him in a different way. He used to
Sure.
motivate me into wanting to do more, be more, because I kind of think I see you. I can't do exactly what you're doing, but it's inspiring me to go do something else. But I now see that our energies are in a different ways, and we're both successful in completely different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's
And so
great.
yeah, it's less of a comparison now. And
Yeah.
I think the fun thing is that finding my happiness meant that I don't compare now. If anyone says, "Oh, but so and so is doing this," that's awesome. If that's making them happy and that's what they're striving for, then that's sick. I don't need to do that. The track that I'm on right now is good, and I'm staying there because whatever they're doing over there, it has no impact on me.
And I think that only comes with age as well. And it's something that like I struggle all the time with things like Instagram, where I'm like virtually seeing other people's successes. And I'm just kind of like, but I know my t-shirts are better than that. I know my hat fits better than that, or, whatever. And I'm just like, but why? And it's just like not a jealousy thing. It is, there's a level of that 100%. But the more I'm like, well, it's different, like their product is just simply different. That audience is different. Their values are different. And that's fine,
Yeah.
you know?
And
Like I
within
struggle with
business,
that.
it's fun because you can analyze what other people are doing. And I do this all the time with YouTube. I see other people's channels explode and grow much quicker. And I'm like, wow, this what's going on there? Surely they must be doing something dodgy to do that. But when you start to analyze it, you think, oh, okay, so they're doing this and that. I could do that. I have the ability to do that, but is that going to bring me happiness? Is that what I want to do?
Right.
So I feel like that's kind of the fun thing. Maybe I should apply that to life, not just with business.
Right. Yeah, totally. Well, how do you gauge your success then? Like, are you only looking at subscribers, or like what are the sort of metrics that you use to gauge your own success? I mean, it could be money too. I mean, I don't know. What is it?
I think it's just enjoyment. I think if I'm enjoying what I'm doing, then I feel successful. I wouldn't class myself as a rich person. I'm not rich.
That's awesome though.
I have an okay size of channel. The following that I have is okay, I think, but the goal was always to have fun, and so just through that, I feel successful. I want more money. There's watches that I want. There's cars that I want. There's a bigger house that I want, but that doesn't mean that I will necessarily feel more successful then. Because I don't know. I just feel like I've completed my initial task, and that was to free myself from the 9 to 5, beat my old salary, and just have more time and enjoy what I'm doing, and that's what I'm doing, and so that's why I feel successful. I'm sure a lot of people will look at me and think, oh, but he's only got 100,000 subscribers. That's not success. Look at this guy. He's got 5 times that, or 1 million subscribers. For me, that doesn't matter. I'm happy doing what I'm doing, and that's just what I want to do.
That's great, man. Yeah, I'm kind of like you, where like there are other watches that I like. There are definitely cars that I would love to own. Um, and I think the perception is often that like, and I was actually talking to Stephen Pulverant about this, about
Right.
it was kind of a one-sided conversation. He had posted something and I said the following, but it was basically like, it's less about the materialism and more about just wanting to be surrounded by beautiful things, beautiful watches, beautiful cars. I'd like to think I've done that very well with my wife. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like,
Sure.
I just enjoy being around beautiful locations. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, California's, no slouch from the visual standpoint, and that's, I mean, no discredit to North Carolina where I'm from, but I love California,
Yeah.
and I think it just comes down to just this obsession with being surrounded by beauty.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because it's challenging when you are surrounded by luxury items to know what is the motivation.
Mm-hmm.
What is it about these things? And a lot of my friends think that I'm a snob because I have a Rolex or whatever.
Right.
That's not what it's about.
Really hard to kind of talk about, to explain yourself out of that mindset without sounding like you're just trying to justify something. But you're right. It is just nice things. The cameras that I have are just nice products. The room that I've created is just a nice room. Yeah, just surround yourself with nice things, whatever that is, whatever that can be.
Yeah, it could be books. I mean, it could be anything, you know? If you haven't heard episode 1 of the Standard Age podcast, then let me tell you about my friend Tim Jackson. As owner of Passion Fine Jewelry, Tim and his team specialize in fine jewelry, as well as some of the finest independent watch brands available. I'm talking about Groenfeld, Habring, Kudoki, Roger Smith, Roman Gauthier, Sarpaneva, the list goes on. The staff at Passion Fine Jewelry is literally made up of friends and family, so you will feel right at home if and when you visit. If California is out of reach, you can absolutely email or call the shop and they'll get you sorted. Visit passionfinejewelry.com for more information. As you all know, I'm a huge fan of using the right product for the right job, and like many of you, I appreciate products with a story. That's why I drive a Volkswagen GTI. It's a hot hatch with heritage. It's also why I'm into specific watches like my Tudor Black Bay. And that's exactly why I'm a fan of the indie accessory brand Cantonment. Cantonment makes a utilitarian cloth they simply call a kerchief. It's smaller than a standard bandana, but larger than a handkerchief, which makes it ideal to tuck in a back pocket or use as a neckerchief. I always take one on a bike ride or have one with me as a backup face covering. Not only do these kerchiefs satisfy several functions, but they look great too. Each set features illustrations celebrating icons of product design like the Omega Speedmaster, the Fender Stratocaster, or my favorite of course, a classic GTI. Follow them on Instagram at Cantonment Co. That's CantonmentCo, or visit them at cantonment.co. And use the code STANDARDH in all caps, no spaces, for 20% off of absolutely everything in their online shop. Now let's get back to the show. Well, let's talk about your e-commerce a little bit more. You started with straps. You've always loved straps. You're very well on the record for that, which is so cool to me. Like, I just love that you explored that with your dad and stuff as a kid. I just think it's awesome. But it's a saturated market and you carried on anyway.
Yeah.
So, like, why weren't you inhibited by the fact that it was a saturated market?
Because a lot of people, and you'll probably connect with this with you and your products. A lot of people
100%.
Focus on the offering. It's like, oh, look, we've got a green one, we've got a red one, we've got a striped one, we've got a spotty one, we've got a pattern one. This one, you can have your own logo on it. And it was always a lot. If you go onto pretty much any other strap website, you'll see every size, every color option, every combination. And for me, I loved the Apple idea of, we've done the thinking, you just choose which one you want. And so there's a small selection of products that Apple have created that are great. It doesn't matter which one you get, whether you get the cheapest MacBook or the most expensive MacBook, they're all great. There are slight variations, and there might be one that might be better for you if you do video editing or whatever, but regardless, all of them are brilliant.
Right.
And that was my idea around straps, was I'm going to do a handful of straps, ones that I would wear personally, but make them amazing. And that there's obviously a cost that comes with that. But as soon as you get the strap, you should see, oh yeah, no, this makes sense. It's like when you open a MacBook or an iPhone compared to pretty much any other phone. The whole process feels great. And when you have that product in your hand, it feels great. And that's exactly the same with our products. Whether you buy a 24-pound nature strap or a 150-pound watch roll, you get exactly the same process. You still get the same packaging, you still get the same tag, you still get the same note. And so it's all a bit of it's like getting a present. And so I really wasn't worried about the market being saturated, because I knew I could do better. I knew I could make a better product, and I knew I could give a better customer experience. And they are luckily, without prompting people, the two big things that everyone says. If you go on Instagram when people tag me in posts, just say the the little tag at every order gets like this little handwritten note just to say thanks.
Yeah.
And that gets Instagrammed as much as the product itself. And that's hilarious. So I just knew I could just do it better than other people. And that's not coming from a place of arrogance of I'm just better.
No,
I've worked in sales and I've worked in retail. I know what makes good customer experience. I know having an eye for detail is the difference between having a good product and a bad product. And also, exactly the same as you, the products that I sell, yes, there's a commercial element. I make profit on everything that I do, but it's from a place of passion. I enjoy what I create and I enjoy what I sell. Therefore, I make sure that it's great, as opposed to I'm just going to slap my name on. You could go buy T-shirts from anywhere for probably 25 cents and put your logo on it and then put it online. But that isn't good enough. That isn't the brand that you want to create. You want to have the best T-shirt, and people know that it doesn't matter about the logo. They know that this product alone is brilliant. And that was exactly my mindset around what I wanted to do.
Yeah, I think user experience is really almost like second to none, right? You know, and you want to feel as though you spent your money on something that was worth it, right? And so that comes down to everything from, and you know who's brilliant at it is Apple, is packaging. You know, when you go through the Apple packaging, it's incredible. And it's so abundantly clear that other brands have completely ripped them off. Like even other like, you know, like little cameras, I'll leave names out. Like some of they shoot more than 180 degrees. I'll say that. And, you know, those packaging is like Apple packaging. And honestly, that was something that I knew I needed to step up to for Standard H as well, because these are like, not the highest of prices, but they're a premium price for the product, right? But I think it's fair. But I knew I needed to step up sort of my packaging game, because using the USPS free boxes, they're just ugly boxes for one, you know? And then second of all, it wasn't the experience I wanted people to have when opening. And honestly, I was really motivated by Ralph Lauren, because when you open a Ralph Lauren box, and I know you wear quite a bit of polo, it's thick paper, it's a sticker, it's that note card, you know, and it makes you feel good, you know what I mean? And that is what luxury does evoke a lot, is emotion, right? Because these aren't products you need, right? Like when I was a manager at Gucci, I used to train my staff with the mentality of, you don't need to sell this product as to why they need it. You should be selling this product as to why they should feel like they can't live without it.
Sure.
And there's a fundamental difference there, you know, and it's emotion. You know, these are all emotional purchases, because there are plenty of other solutions to this, you know, question of product.
And I saw that when I opened, when you sent me that T-shirt, it was, wow.
Oh,
And
well, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, but the paper that you use in a little sticker, I didn't actually rip that sticker open. I twisted the paper and shook the T-shirt out because I didn't want to ruin the paper. I thought, man, I'm keeping this tidy. So it's yeah, all of that stuff stood out, and it's funny because you could explain that to someone and they might say, oh, but surely you just saved money if you didn't have the paper or you did this and that. But then that isn't your market, and this is what I say when people say, oh, your straps are too expensive. That's fine. That is totally cool, because I want you to recognize the difference. And I love it when people email me and say, I really like the fact that your buckles have this little hole in the side of it because it's similar to that. It's like, I love the fact you noticed that. I love the fact that you took the time to inspect the product and want to get to know the product, because that's the market. I don't have to sell a million. It'd be great to sell 1 million straps a year, but I want people to enjoy every single product. And if anyone's never happy, if anyone isn't happy about the product, send it back, man. I don't want you to waste your money on my product and not be happy with it. No one benefits from buying a product that they don't want. And so it's always about just fixing that stuff.
Yeah, totally.
The tiny details.
Yeah, it's all about the details to me. And to take it a step further, people can even remark, but you charged me $8 to ship this. I lose money on every shipment I send out.
I hate shipping.
You know what I
I
mean?
always have this conversation with people that because unless you're a big company and you can, we're actually only just starting to talk. I've just got a contract through with a big shipping company to get proper rates. But for small
Nice.
companies, it's impossible. And
It's
we
awful.
all of our, it's not subsidized. When people pay for shipping, that isn't actually the cost of shipping.
No.
We're adding more money on top of that. That's kind of the customer's contribution to the shipping, and then we're having to add a bit more on top of that just to try and make it economical or commercial. Basically, if you compare our shipping to a bigger company, we look like a ripoff, and that's just because we're a tiny company. And if we go to DHL and say, "Oh, we're going to ship X amount of these things a day," it's like, no, we're dealing with Joe Bloggs who's shipping 1,000 units a day. Says, yeah, I hate shipping.
Totally. No, I'm 100% on board. You're really fair with your pricing though. So did you have a goal or like a philosophy behind your profitability, or like what's
the mentality?
The goal was, I kind of have this idea of Tudor in mind, where it's a premium. It's not the cheapest. You could get the same category of product, not level of product, but the same category of product cheaper. But at the same time, it's not Rolex. So you could get a Tudor watch and pick it up and think it's a sizable chunk of money, right? A Tudor's probably $2,500-3,000 for a watch. Now you could pick up a Rolex and you would be able to see a slight difference, but not the cost difference. You could pick up a cheaper watch and you could definitely see that there is a big difference in build quality. And that's what one of my straps be. I wanted my straps to be that they aren't the cheapest. You can go elsewhere and buy a similar product for a lot less. But at the same time, if you compare it to Omega straps that are 4 times the price of mine, 5 times the price of mine,
right?
There isn't that much difference between the two items. And so that was essentially my idea was I want to make a great product that costs enough for you to feel like I have to think about it. But at the same time, when you get it, you think, holy shit, this is a bargain. I don't understand how Adrian can charge this much for a strap, yet Omega charges 5 times the amount, yet there's probably 2% difference in build quality. So that was kind of my idea, was having Tudor in mind. I think that answers the question.
Yeah, no. I love that approach. You know, even the fact that it's watch related. You know, I wanted to ask you this. I thought about cutting this question out, but I definitely want to leave it in because this is something I battle with. And I feel like this conversation, the tone of it and the subjects we've been breaching, I think this fits right in. So maybe you correct me if I'm wrong. But when it comes to producing products, I've had so many situations where the manufacturers like mess something up, but I'm so scared to like call them out on it because for them to produce it for me, I'm sort of the low man on the totem pole from like a production standpoint, that like I'm afraid they're just going to tell me to like fuck off basically.
Yeah.
Whereas like, but from a business standpoint, like I need my stuff to be right. You know what I mean? So it's like, I often, and I don't know, maybe this is just like my own insecurity, but like I often feel like they're doing me a favor, you know, because they're big and I'm tiny. So like there's like this fear of getting dropped by them after searching far and wide for manufacturers and finally landing on one that's willing to work with me. Like, do you go through that at all, or am I just a complete head case?
100%. And actually, COVID's been all right for us. COVID's been good for us commercially. It's obviously a horrible thing, and lots of bad things have happened. But commercially, right? It's worked out. But one bad thing that happened was when pretty much the whole world went into lockdown. That was when I felt like I was put in the pecking order, and I was at the bottom. Because I have my Italian-made straps. Our leather goods are made in Italy, and this guy makes straps for watch companies and much larger um, publication companies compared to me. And it was, he actually told me the factory had shut. I thought, well, okay, fine, cool. If that's what you need to do to keep your employees safe, then cool, game on, and let's catch up in 6 months' time. And then 6 months' time, oh no, we never shut. No, we're still open. All right. So that's how I sit within this ranking. So I completely get it. And also downstairs, I have a box of probably 600 straps, which I won't sell because they don't meet the level of what I want. Yet I wasn't at the point where I could pull them up on it. And so that's a hit on me. That's just something that I have to take.
Yeah.
And it's a real challenge when you feel like, even though you're paying them for a service, you're the customer, right? you're their customer. You're giving them money. Yes, you're getting something in exchange, but you're essentially you're still within the customer journey. Yet because it's B2B, business to business, it's a different relationship. And I completely understand your feeling of, I need to keep them on side. And so, yeah, it's a real challenge. So yeah, I've got stock that is all wrapped, all ready to go, but it won't go on the website because it's just not at the level. And I just accept that as that's just part of the cost, really.
Yeah, you know,
it does suck. And it's funny because it's like, yeah, I am the customer. I am paying you. But they're like, yeah, but you're not paying what these other people are paying.
yeah.
You know, or like we're not, yeah. So
it's happened with so many products of mine, and I'm so thankful for the people that I have been able to work with.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious because like you're also working on like products yourself, and I was just curious. I've never asked that question to anybody else, but
I left my first supplier because they were just absolutely. There could have been a language barrier, but I just felt like they worked with massive companies as well. They're very well known in their field and highly regarded, which annoyed me. Which kind of felt like when I got the product from them and it was subpar, I thought, one, you're making me look stupid because I now can't sell this product. But two, either everyone's just blowing smoke up your ass, or you are just being pricks to me and just giving me a subpar. Something weird was odd, and I just walked away from that deal. But sometimes you find a great supplier, and there's just that one or two little things, or 600 little things that go wrong. So no, it's a real challenge. It's quite comforting to know that I'm not the only one going through that.
Yeah. This was nothing but like misery loves company. No, just kidding. But as you've rolled out your e-commerce, what would you have done differently on day one now that you're, a couple years into it?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't really know. I unfortunately, it was a big success literally from day one. From minute one, it all worked.
Incredible.
I have this annoying thing of not outsourcing. And I really need to start outsourcing product photography, because that stuff just takes a long time and it's not enjoyable. For me, I don't like it. I know other people do. And so I should outsource things like product photography and marketing, perhaps. I'm a bit of a control freak when it comes to things like that. And also, I'm a bit tight with the idea of, I could do that. Why am I paying someone else to take photographs of products when I can do it myself?
And you do it well.
Thanks, but someone else will do it much better, because it's so ununiform. I hate the fact when you go to my homepage and you see the background of the products is all a ever so slight different tone of grey or shade of grey, and that does my head in. And so I should pay someone to Photoshop the background to make it all uniform, and that would make the operation look better and tidier.
That's the whole reason my new website has been lagging, is because I've had to teach myself how to Photoshop images out of the background and stuff like that. Like, I am not a computer person. So it is completely ironic that I run an e-commerce based business and I do a podcast and like all these like electronic things. Like I have a joke with my wife, honestly, that I have electromagnetic field around my body that just repels technology. And like my garage door opener won't work for me. My iPhone doesn't work half the time. Like technology hates me. And so that's why it takes me forever to get anything done.
And there are people out there who can do this stuff. The problem is for me is organization. I think I have a level of perhaps ADHD, or I'm pretty sure there's like an element of that in my head where I'm just disorganized, but I become fixated on a little thing. So when it comes to product photography, I'll do it at the last moment, literally the day of launching a new product. I'll be in the studio taking the photographs, editing and putting it online. I'll make sure it's as good as I can. But if I was more organized and said, right, in 6 weeks' time, we're going to launch this product. Let's get this product out to so-and-so to get them to take product shots. It'd just be a far better result.
Yeah.
And if you kind of calculate the amount of time it takes me to take the product shots, it'd be cheaper for them to do it.
Yeah.
All logic says order. And to be fair, I never order the products in time anyway. So the product literally arrives a couple of days before the launch. I take the photographs, get it online, job done. And that's not the right way to do it. What I do differently is study launching. Launching products, there's a science and there's an art to it. And I'm slowly learning this. And it's fascinating, the process of launching and psychology around launching a product. So that's what I do differently. I'd study the art of launching.
What? Okay, so share a tip or two.
So there is. Let me quickly load up my podcast app. Give me 2 seconds. You can cut.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Launch Life. Yeah, it's called Launch Life by Jeff Walker. So Jeff Walker has studied product launches, and that's he's kind of the Gary V of product launches.
Oh, interesting.
He's got a really interesting journey, and it's kind of a passive journey that he had of this kind of viewpoint of the psychology behind launching a product, and it's now become his thing. He now advises companies on how to launch products, and it's all around teasing, but doing teasing in the right way and then following up. So it's not just the lead into launching a product. It's what are you doing after the launch? How are you engaging with the customers who bought and the customers who didn't buy after the launch? How are you kind of carrying on that sales process after the sale or when the sale has failed? It's interesting. I'm still at the relative start of it all, but just the idea of it. If you check out the podcast, start at the start of it, because he kind of
it's kind of linear.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's interesting, and they're very short podcasts. I think he's got a book out. I don't really read much, but
yeah, I'm the same way.
Jeff Walker, interesting stuff.
Oh, cool, man. Well, thanks for sharing that for sure. What are your future plans for assortment growth, or be it e-commerce, commerce expansion? Seems like there's a new hire on the horizon.
There is. Well, we did hire my sister-in-law, but at the same time,
Nice.
so did a large watch company. So
Oh, really?
yeah, so that's so she's gone there.
Oh no.
Basically, her job. She used to work for Hermes, and her job. She used to work for Gucci as well, and then she went to Hermes. And then she had a kid, and then she's now working for I can't say the brand.
That's fine.
But she's working for them now. But yeah, no, we need to figure out what the business structure is, and we're in this weird situation of, can we commit to a whole salary? Do we want to commit to a whole salary of someone else?
Right.
Should we take a step back rather than hire someone, refine what we're doing, and make our processes better? So we've actually done that. We actually looked at our packing processes and thought, well, what can we do to streamline this process and reduce the time it takes to do an individual order? So we're looking at that. That we will start hiring. We're buying a house at the moment, so we kind of need to get that project done and then properly sit down and look at what we're going to do, whether it's going to be content creation or whether it's going to be administrative and operational. That's kind of the challenge. I'd love to have someone to help me create content, but commercially that doesn't make sense because the content isn't a moneymaker. It's the products that are the moneymaker. So if we're going to hire, it would make sense to hire someone who's on the money-making side and just let me do the creative and content stuff.
Right.
It will happen. I love the idea of having some kind of investment and having a big office, a fun office, not a horrible office, but like essentially a big studio of people working on multiple projects. Because I don't have to be the person making the B-roll and doing all that stuff. I don't have to be the editor. All this stuff is a skill. It's not something anyone can learn how to do this stuff. It's the creative stuff is a harder thing to learn, but the technical side, anyone can do it. So it'd be great to have people helping out with that.
Yeah, I think Peter McKinnon's got that nailed from like
his setup is so I talked to them quite a bit, and they're just solid guys. Captain Kirk and his that setup, they just two cool dudes working together to make awesome content. It doesn't get better than that, and it's such a tight setup as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, just wrapping up, I know you've mentioned involving more travel and sort of adventure travel into your channel. What's coming up now that things are opening back up?
I'm going to take my car. So I've got a Discovery Sport and the seats fold completely flat.
Yeah, you could sleep.
I'm going to go out and travel up to the Highlands in Scotland and just take a watch out, do a bit of a video and sleep in the back of the car. And I think it could be a laugh. It might not be a laugh. It might just be a really uncomfortable night's sleep. But I think it just be look. I love spending time on my own. I'm happy in my own little head, and I like the idea of just kind of going out into the wilderness. It'd be cool to make some content that is just out there. I also just want an excuse just to pack the car up with fun stuff and just play with gadgets like little camping stoves and just make breakfast in the morning. I love the idea of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it too, man. Like it's been years since I've been camping, but like that, it's just, that sounds like a blast. Adrian, this has been a blast. It always is. I will keep you in the loop on anything and everything, with related to releasing this episode. I can't thank you enough, man. I never have enough time.
Thanks so much for having me. No, it's always a pleasure. And what I love about catching up with you is that I feel like we're so much on the same page when it comes to life and business, which is really cool. And that was so apparent from the first time that we spoke. Yeah.
Adrian, thanks so much, man. It's great to see you.
Thanks, Wesley.
Okay,
have a great day, buddy.
You as well.
Cheers, mate.
Talk to you soon.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Major thanks goes out to Adrian again, and thanks to all of you for listening. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the show, and while you're there, if you don't mind rating and even leaving a short review, it helps way more than you think. Please give Standard H a follow on Instagram @StandardH_, as well as the podcast page @StandardH_podcast. Shout out to Jensen Reed and Super Beautiful for the theme track, as well as the clear audio for the noise canceling headphones. Stay tuned for the next episode of the Standard H podcast in 2 weeks' time. Thanks again for listening.